Welcome to Design Domination, where you'll learn to become a better, more business-savvy designer so you can dominate your competition. Hi, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Colleen Grotzer, and in this episode of Design Domination, I'm talking about all different types of pricing, so you can understand how to price your design work, and even use some of these tips strategically. This will help you be more profitable and get more respect. First, let's start with some ways to price that I don't recommend, and why. I think it's important to understand the pitfalls of these types of pricing. Let's start with the one that most designers opt for, and that's hourly pricing. I think it's probably popular among designers because it's very cut and dry. Hey, I worked this many hours, you owe me this much money. But really, it's because most designers don't understand their value and how to price design work otherwise. Pricing by the hour for creative work is garbage. You get paid solely for your time. So if the job takes you less time, you get paid less. Let's get this straight. If you work faster, you're punished by getting paid less. And shouldn't you get paid more if you're better and can deliver the job faster? I mean, that's good for the client too. There's this story about Picasso, and I don't know if it's true or not, but he was sketching a woman's portrait, and when he was done, she asked how much she owed him, and he said like $5,000 or whatever it was, and she was like, "What, are you crazy? That took like 2 minutes for you to sketch and do, and why would I owe you that much money if it only took you that little bit of time?" And he said it took him a lifetime to be able to do that. Also, do you want to be focused on the project or focused on the clock? Is that going to help you help them? No. With hourly pricing, you don't get paid for your creativity, expertise, or the value of the work. And you're usually not charging enough by the hour to even cover your expenses. Your hourly rate might be this number that you made up in your head that you thought sounded good. It might not take into consideration taxes, health insurance costs, general and liability insurance costs, retirement contributions, getting new equipment, the cost of your website hosting, domain names, internet, and so forth. Plus, your hourly rate usually gets pitted against another designer's hourly rate, and that rate becomes the focus for the client. It encourages them to be driven by price and time rather than on quality. Not only that, but an hourly rate is meaningless to a client unless they know how long a job will take. Clients don't necessarily see it that way, though. They usually focus on the rate without also considering the number of hours. This drives me nuts. I see people all the time on Facebook asking for designers to contact them and provide their hourly rates. It's ridiculous. Tire kickers, shop around for the lowest rate, but a designer with a higher rate could spend a lot less time than one with a lower rate, and that could cost the client less. So I can't understand this mentality. There's a great saying by Red Adair: if you think it's expensive to hire a professional, wait until you hire an amateur. If they're shopping by rate and they're not taking into consideration the number of hours with that, then they're potentially writing a blank check. And who wants to do that? That causes sticker shock when they get the invoice. That means they might dispute it. "Oh, well, I didn't think the project was that involved," they might say. They usually have no idea how long something will take and have a ridiculously small number in mind. It just causes so much nickel and diming. They might even ask you if you're charging them the actual time down to the minute. Or do you break it into quarter hours? I know, I've heard this all before. The next thing you know, they're shopping around for someone with a lower rate. They might also say, "Why did it take you so long? I know a designer who charges less per hour. I'll use them next time." Great, go for it. Oftentimes what happens next is you end up sucking it up and reduce the invoice to appease them and meet their low expectations. There's also the case of value. Let's take a logo design as an example. Is the logo worth less to them if you spend 2 hours on it or 20 hours? Should you get paid less because it took less time? But should you get paid more because it took more time? I realize a lot of designers charge hourly because they want to make sure they get paid for their time. But what about your creativity, expertise, or the value of your work? What about clients who want to know what they're paying up front, not writing a blank check? Hourly pricing only benefits you if the job is a poorly defined scope. But you can nip that issue right in the bud by doing a paid discovery call. Yes, paid and for a flat rate to help the client figure out the scope. You'll be seen as an expert, get more respect, and get paid for helping them figure out the approach to the project. Problem solved. Experts just don't charge hourly for design work. Per page pricing is another option for creative work, and that's based on the number of pages. Now, I've been having a friendly debate about this one with a colleague. I've charged by the page before, but I don't like it. She does, and that's fine. Maybe I've just had more crappy clients in my career. That may very well be the case. But I have experienced many problems with per page pricing. First off, what defines a page? The number of pages in their Word document? That varies from client to client. Or does it mean the number of pages in the final layout in InDesign or on a website? It's anyone's guess, really, unless you spell it out. With this type of pricing, the client may become focused on page count. And that means they might ask you to reduce text size or margins, or start tracking text or reducing the size of images, whatever it might be, to reduce the page count. I kid you not. You're spending additional time to reduce the page count, which means you're paid less, and they will pay less on printing. So let's get this straight. You're giving away time for free, and you're saving them money on printing, and you're getting paid less. When I've run into this situation, I've told the client, nope, this is based on what I lay out. If you decide to have me modify the design to reduce the page count, you're still paying for that higher page count because I did the work. The other issue with charging by the page is that every page is different. One page could be blank, for example, like to get a page to start on the right-hand side of a spread. Sure, you could just not count those. Okay, fine. But maybe some pages are body text only, and others are infographics and tables and footnotes. Oh my. A lot of people ask me for a per-page rate for accessibility remediation of InDesign files, or for website audits. And this is why I don't charge by the page. Because a longer, less complex document or website could take less time than a few complex pages. It really depends on the content. In terms of page layout, though, flowing and laying out only text is much easier than having to address footnotes and sidebars and tables. Now, there's also flat rate pricing. This is what I prefer. The benefits are that you and the client both know what the cost is ahead of time. No surprises. The problem is that most designers aren't charging enough as it is, so they're usually afraid of charging a flat rate. But if you don't start doing this, you will always be pitted against other designers on pricing. This is why I've always tracked time on every project, even when charging flat rates. I can refer back to other projects with similar scopes and get a good idea for how long something might take based on what was involved. And even though I'm not charging hourly, I can get a baseline for the time involved and then go from there. And then mark it up. Flat rate billing can also result in less admin and billing work on both ends as well. It also makes it easy to figure out and send an invoice for 50% up front, even if you're giving a range. Something that's important to consider with flat rate pricing is that if you're not sure if you're charging enough in the first place, at least clearly define the scope. Such as getting final proofread copy so you don't have to redo the layout like 3 darn times, specifying the number of designs, and specifying the number of drafts or the time for revisions. If you know you're charging enough, most designers aren't, or that the client doesn't normally make a gazillion revisions, then you could potentially not mention a specific number of designs or revisions. There are a lot of designers who don't reference them with their pricing. And there are several ways that you could come up with a flat rate. Content-based pricing is one way to come up with a flat rate. That takes into account the amount of content and the complexity of it. For instance, editors and writers usually consider a page to be about 250 words. This formula takes into account design, white space, etc. But what this does is it gives you a guideline to use from project to project. You're not necessarily going to know the format a project takes when you're pricing it. A lot of times that should be done in a discovery call. Part of what they're hiring you to do is to figure out if this should be, like, let's say, a trifold brochure or a double postcard. You shouldn't be doing that work, which is solving part of the problem, before you get paid. So using the amount of content is helpful. Plus, all clients set up their text files differently. They may have more margins or use a larger text size. Maybe they even use page breaks so that certain sections start on a new page, and that just adds to the page count. Using a standard word count, though, helps you get a baseline for the amount of copy that a document has, regardless of how many pages it turns out to be in the layout file or on a website. It's also not dependent upon the page size of a document, because some documents could be 6 by 9, or they might be 8.5 by 11, for example. And if you decide to use 2 columns in your layout, that will accommodate more text to a page, another variable. So because of all these factors, I find this is also helpful to use when comparing pricing from past projects to ones that I need to estimate. It gives an absolute, a fixed measure, not one that changes from job to job. Somebody's 5 pages is another person's 10 pages. Value-based pricing and client-based pricing are other types of flat rate pricing. Blair Enns talks about pricing the client all the time. What is the value of the work to the client? What are they trying to accomplish? Are they a larger company or organization? If so, the work holds more value. A day rate is another type of flat rate. I've used a day rate in conjunction with a flat project-based fee, where the day rate was for being available to make revisions immediately. So I told them the project would cost X, and then being available to make any edits that same day that they submitted them would be Y. I may or may not have had to push other work around to accommodate them. They didn't need to know that. I was saying, yes, I can meet your urgent deadline, and here's what that will cost. Package pricing is a type of flat rate pricing. It could be one time or on an ongoing basis. Package pricing usually involves a very specific scope. You'll get this for X price, and anything else will be an additional cost. This works well when you serve a niched type of client with certain needs. For example, if you're a logo designer, you might have a package for coaches that includes a brand identity package and social media templates. If you're a web designer, you might offer ongoing web maintenance, a set list of tasks or time for support every month. The caveat with package pricing is that if a bigger client comes along, they will get bargain basement pricing. And that might be a big win for them and a big loss for you because they should pay more. Or it might turn them off because they might see it as they were expecting to pay more than what you're charging, and therefore it must not be as high quality as they were thinking. Tiered pricing is another way to price your creative services. It could be flat rate package pricing, where you offer 2 to 3 levels of packages of pricing. Again, the scope is usually very specific. You'll get the standard package for X price, you'll get the medium level one for this price, and the highest level one for this price. This could be one time, monthly, quarterly, or whatever. Tiered pricing can be a motivator for clients to choose a certain package or tier over another. For instance, maybe the cheapest one doesn't include all the bells and whistles they want. The highest one, though, is more than they want to pay. It can strategically steer them toward the middle package or tier. Tiered pricing can also be hourly. I have a client with a huge accessibility job that is a rush every year, and I charge hourly for that, which is something I rarely do, only in certain cases. There's no creative work involved, though. But because they have special needs where they cannot provide content until very close to their deadline, I offer a combination of tiered and hourly, which depends on when they send me their content. So for the content they get to me by such and such date, like a certain week, they pay one rate. For content sent to me the next week, it's a higher rate. If it's a week after that, it's the highest rate. It requires overtime work and at a condensed schedule on my end, so I make sure it's worth my while. But on their side of things, it accommodates what they're able to do, so it works for them. With flat rate pricing, gosh, I feel like I'm talking about stuff at the post office, like flat rate shipping. With flat rate pricing, I sometimes offer 2 different prices based on 2 different schedules. You want it within X number of business days or weeks, it will be this. You want it in fewer days, it will cost this much, meaning more. This gives the clients a choice, though. They can decide if they want to save money or save time. Now, maybe you're wondering how I price my work. This will sound super dirty, but I base my pricing on a combination of hourly, and that's to get a baseline, and not just on the work itself, but project management, meetings, etc. And then content. How much content, how complex it is, the value to the client, the size of the client, the needs of the client. Are there other services I can include that will serve their needs? And then the time frame for the project. Is this a rush schedule or non-rush? And then I give a flat rate. And sometimes it's a range based on these factors. But only I am privy to what goes into my pricing. I hope this has given you insight into how to price your work. And I hope I didn't overly complicate things. Just know that you can be creative with your pricing to suit the needs of the client. Also keep in mind that however you decide to price your work is your business, not your client's. If they ever ask you to justify your pricing to them, that's a red flag. I was once asked this by a client of 16 years to get on a video call with their board and explain how I came up with my pricing. I will never, ever justify my pricing to any client. If they don't like it, no one's holding a gun to their head to hire me. I fired that client right then. I refuse to be disrespected like that. Your business is your business and nobody else's business. If you're interested in more information on pricing, check out episode 30 on pricing mistakes. And if you're having trouble charging more and being able to justify it, not to clients, but to yourself, then don't walk to creative-boost.com/BIB for a brand identity builder. That's B as in boy, B as in boy. My brand identity builder will give you a solid process for brand identity consultations, execution, and delivery. It will help you transform how you're perceived by clients.